Hello, welcome to part 14 of this Learning JavaScript series. So on the last video, we built a super simple promise object by hand to learn more or less how the real one works. So in this video, we're going to work with the real promise object. And why are we looking at promise objects? Because it's how JavaScript keeps track of asynchronous work, like receiving data from a server, for example. So let's get started. Let's jump right in. Const or order is equal to a new promise, and a promise object takes guests and callback function. JavaScript, we love callbacks. So reject. And then the set timeout takes in, guess what? And callback function and the time. So 1 second. And resolve. Ready. So this is it. This is the real promise object. We hand in a callback function. That function gets resolve and reject handed to it. So in this example, we set a timer, set timeout, and when it's done, it runs the resolve function that was given to us. And we did not do the reject on this little example. So like on our little promise handmade one, it only has 3 states, this promise: a pending, a fulfilled, and a rejected. So when we run or we create a new instance of the promise object, it runs the constructor inside and sets the state to pending immediately and hands it back to order. And then after a second, when the result gets ran, it changes it to fulfill, right? So let's see how it works on the real promise. So let's play around. Let's console.log the order. So this will get ran just immediately, and after 1 second it will change to fulfilled. So if we Control S now and immediately see this, it's a promise fulfilled. Maybe I took too long. Control S, pending. See, if I Control S here, Control S, then wait, and I open this, promise fulfilled. If I do it fast enough, pending. So if we do a little trick like this, and then console.log the order after, I don't know, 2 seconds, pending, and the next one, fulfilled, right? So this is how this promise works. It passes a promise object with the status pending immediately to this order instance, And then when the timeout finishes, it runs this resolve, and the resolve changes the status to fulfilled and passes this latte ready we specified on the resolve function, passes this as a value. All right, let's move on. So instead of this trickery to react to when promise resolves, the promise object has a .then method. Order .then, and it passes, guess what? A callback function. So it passes these callback functions to a list, and it gets executed once this resolve is ran. So this resolve changes the status for pending to fulfilled, passes what we pass here as a value, and then passes this callback function to a callback list to get run when it resolves. So here we are going to do console.log message, because on the callback we need a message. And what gets put in, because the result will, when the result runs, it runs what's on the list, and this function is, and it passes this value to this callback function, to what we put here as a parameter. So let's run this. 1 second, and then here, latte ready. So it passes this value as the parameter of the callback function we pass in the then method. So this works exactly like our little fake promise we did on the last video, our simple version. But one thing the real promises can do that ours didn't is chaining thens. If we return something, here gets passed to another one. But it's only worth it if we have something to chain it, right? So let's do another example, a more real one, and we are gonna try to fake fetching from a server. So let's get to that example. My fetch, and then resource, we're gonna name it resource. Now our fetch is gonna return like the real fetch. Like real fetch returns a promise object. Like if we const is equal to a fetch, const p is equal to fetch from some API, from some API, the menu. What this fetch returns is a promise. Like our little function, my fetch, it's gonna be a fake fetch. Run, error, 404 not found. Localhost from some API, the menu. All right, let's keep going with our little my fetch example. Okay, so promise takes in a callback function, like always, no? Like everything almost. And the callback function we send to the promise constructor gets passed to us two other functions, the resolve and the reject. They get handed back to us. Weird? Yes, I know, very weird. So then set timeout takes. Guess what does the set timeout take? Yes, you guessed it right. A callback function. Everything. And it also takes time. In this case, half a second. All right. So this is where a real calling will be. We're faking a go get something from a server and taking a little time with this set timeout that will take half a second. And then my fetch function will return this promise object. All right. So let's do if our resource parameter we passed in is equal to menu, because we are fetching my menu from my coffee shop. We use the resolve function to get back a list of objects. And then like this, comma. Our first object is going to be name latte, comma, price 4.5. So this is kind of like the equivalent of a list of dictionaries if it were Python. A list of objects, also what would come back like a JSON object, right? And this is very common if we were to fetch something from an SQL server, a table, say, bring us back my table with my menu, and then it would come back like a list of objects. Latte Americano. We will do examples of this full bringing from an SQL later on. Or I will. House blend 3.0. So if the resource we fetch is menu, we are gonna resolve giving back a menu. And then else if resource is equal to tax rate, because now we are fetching another endpoint of our API. So our fake API, if we type menu, results bringing me a menu. And if I type tax rate, it will resolve 0.08. And else, if it's my API only has two endpoints, menu and tax rate. So if anything else was input to my fetch function, it will reject with could not fetch, and then plus resource. Is this simple enough? I think it is. Let me save, see if I don't have any syntax errors. Looks like I do not, which would be some kind of miracle. All right, let's move on. So let's use a little my fetch function. Let's use it to fetch some stuff. My fetch. Let's use it to fetch a menu. So what happens if I run this? Nothing. Nothing. Dot then, and then guess what? You guessed it, a callback function. Menu console.log menu. Control S. There. After half a second, it returns our menu. Here it is. So like before, because my fetch function takes a while because it goes to a fake server. In this case, it's a set timeout. Takes a little while. Then when it comes back, it runs the callback function we passed in the then. And it assigns to this parameter whatever we resolved. This is when we use then. Then there's a catch version where gets passed in what we rejected. So let's do that. So let me pass this over here. Let me pass this like this. And then dot catch. And then this catch method is for when it gets rejected. The then is for the results. If a result gets run, the catch is in case a reject is run. So the catch, and again, a callback function, a callback like this, and the callback console.log, and then failed plus this error. So right now, if I run, everything cool because we ran our fetch with the menu. And then if we fetch it with tax rate save, it results with 0.8. And if we run it with something like beer, failed, could not fetch beer because beer is not what we can fetch, right? All right, so now the useful part. Say we want the price of a latte with tax on top. That's two steps. First, dig the latte out of the menu, then do the text math. So let's see what happens when the function inside a dot then, like this one, returns a value. Because right now we only console.log. So what happens if we return something, right? Well, let's write it. Then console.log message, and then here message. Save. Whoop, could not find fetch. Message. Sorry. There. Something. If we return something on the first, then it gets passed to the second, then to as a parameter for the callback. So let's do a more realistic example. The one I talked about, the applying the tags. So let's do it. Let's do that one. My fetch, and then menu, right? Dot then, and then our dot then. Guess what? Yes, a callback function. Takes in the value it returned, right? Menu. In this case, it's the menu because we fetched for the menu object. So then we are going to, what are we going to do? Const latte is equal to find, and then from a couple of videos ago about arrays, find. So it runs, guess what? Yes, a callback function. Runs a callback function on every item of the array. And find returns the we gotta name our parameter d, which is every object of an array, which is an object. So d dot name, if d dot name is equal to latte, which is gonna be this one, it gets back the whole latte object to this latte const, right? So then we return latte dot price. So then we use that on the next then dot then, because it's going to return the latte price. It's going to return 4.5. So then we use that, and this one again. Guess what? A callback function. Just when you thought it was gonna take something else, no. Callback function again. And the callback function is gonna const total is gonna be equal to the price times 1.08. Well, we could have brought in the tax rate, right? Well, maybe we'll do that in a bit. And then what are we doing? We console.log latte with tax, and then comma total let's save latte with tax 4.86. So did you notice what happened? So we returned the latte price. We fetched for the menu. When it came back, the fetch takes a while. And when it comes back, it runs this that we pass on the then. So it runs this with the menu, it finds the price, and then it returns the price. When it returns, it gets passed to the next then. So we can change stuff that takes a little time, and then it will run one after the other. This is the nice thing about this real promise. It changed things. So what I said here, we hard coded the tax rate, but we have it also. What if we change this or so let's bring it now. The next example, let's also bring it from my fetch function from our fake API. Let's do that. So let's do that. This goes deep into the rabbit hole fast, but let's do it anyway. And because we might need to fetch the menu, the prices, and then fetch the tax rate. And so to calculate one thing multiplied for the other, we cannot do it if they take separate time. So we need to chain them. We need to fetch inside another fetch. So how do we do that? So here we're not going to return the latte price. We are going to skip this for now. And we are going to return what we are going to return is what my fetch again. We're going to run my fetch again on this return. And what was it? Tax rate. And then we dot then, and the dot then, what does it take in? Exactly, a callback function. We love those, don't we? It's going to bring in with the tax rate, because this is what my fetch is going to resolve with a tax rate. So we are going to now inside here, we return an object. So we can return two things easily. A price, now latte.price, and the tax rate with tax rate. Is this simple enough? Let me save, see if nothing breaks. Right? Apparently not. So then let me dot then and then yes, a callback, and this gets handed this object, right? So it's the data. And what are we going to do with the data? Let's calculate the total, and it's data dot price times the data dot data docs tax rate, but no, that's not good enough. We need to multiply times 1 plus the data rate. So 1.08 to get the price with tax. Is that right? Okay. So then we console.log the latte with tax, and then we comma total to fixed 2. So will this break if I save? Oops. Let's see. Control S. 1 second. Yay! Latte with tax. So was this deep enough in the rabbit hole for you? It is for me. So this chaining of thens, then and here the other then, this then and this then gets more powerful if the then returns another promise. So it's a polite way to wait for one thing to finish to run the other one. Like on this case, we needed the tax rate, we needed the menu and the tax rate so we can calculate stuff. So let's do another example, a more simpler one with this chaining. So let's come back to a simpler example dot then, and then we never get away from our callbacks. Menu. Console.log menu is in. Now fetching tax rate. And then we return my fetch tax rate like this, right? And then dot then, so this gets passed, we call it with a callback, but this one gets passed in as a parameter what the other one returns. So it was the tax rate, yes, rate. So we console.log the tax rate, comma rate. All right, let's Control S to save and run. And you see no fetch. So took a while, did this, took a while. Let me exaggerate this to 1 second there. And then you see tax rate. Beautiful. So we already did a dot catch, and then guess what? Yes, our callback. So we console.log hello world. Error. All right, so what if we fetch a beer? Hello world could not fetch beer. My beer got cut off because it never ran a resolve. It immediately ran the reject because what we passed in was not either menu or tax rate. So our fake API returned a reject. So this catch brings in the reject with this could not fetch, and then plus what we passed in. So could not fetch, and then what we passed in but it ran this console.log hello world before the error. So it could have been like this. Could not fetch beer. All right. So let's mix it up. What happens if here we ask for the menu, save, menu seen, now fetching the tax rate. All right, but then we fetched the tax rate. So this gets passed to this console.log and the rate. So here is where we just say taxed erroneously, for example. Save. Menu seen, now fetching could not fetch tax. Beautiful, no? So just for the importance of this catch, if we do not put it here and we run this fetching and then boop, error, and this breaks our JavaScript and breaks our web page. All right. So this is very difficult for me, this whole thingy. So I hope I did not make it more confusing for you. I hope. So that will be it for this video. See you on the next one, and thanks a lot for watching.